Hi, hello, and welcome, or welcome back, I suppose. This video is a long time coming, to be honest. I have loved Araki's illustration style for, honestly, like, an age. I love trying to make little, sort of, not like recreations, but yeah, actually also recreations of his stuff, or like, trying to work with bits of his style. I've said for a while that I do actually want to do a proper study of some kind with his stuff. I have done a couple of physical paintings for my brother, which have been working with his style, like some parts literally taken from his stuff, just like recreations, working with other sort of motifs that I've seen through it, all that sort of thing. And then I did a bit of an actual study with an MXM bit of fan art that I did recently, and used some of what I picked up in that and the paintings that I did to make my first piece that was just line art and tones. I've not illustrated like that before, and honestly, it's one of my favourite pieces I've done in a while. But all that to say, I have been mad into his stuff for ages, and yet I have not actually ever read or watched JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Well, Part 1, Phantom Blood, is only 3 volumes, so I figure we can cover this first part in a single review video and find out whether I'm bought in enough to read the rest of the series. Couple things before I go in. 1, these are translated by Evan Galloway, and 2, expect spoilers ahead. It's a little bit of a sort of, I'm talking about the first 3 parts in the series, so spoilers for that. And I will say, keep spoilers for the rest of the series out of the comments, please, because this is all I've read. I've only read part 1, and I know that the series has been out for a while, but I don't know that much about the rest of the series, other than some tiny little bits. And even then, that's only like, I think I kind of understand this, so please, just keep spoilers for the rest of the series out of the comments. I'm not going plot point by plot point, but I do think it's right to start at the beginning of this book, and it is, well, and it is a bold open, as you can see here. The prologue introduces us to the darkly violent aspects to the book as much as it introduces the stone mask and its powers. I was immediately hooked in, and getting to see some of Araki's colour work is always a pleasure, given much of the book and much of what makes his work so recognisable is more of his like inking style and that kind of thing. We're also further back in time than I was expecting for this first part, so that prologue is quite a ways back in time, but the actual main bulk of the story starts in 1880, and by the end we are in 1889. I also didn't think we'd be in England, but to be fair, I had no idea where we'd be. I only know the location of part 5, I think it is, because that's the one with the little Italians, and I love them. I love the design aspects of that part, everything I've seen. I love Jonah's little heart cut out, everything about Mr. and his weird little hat. I think it's fantastic. I think it's gorgeous. But where was I? But the time and place gives us some amazing shots in a variety of ways. The way Araki shows fabrics is so delectable, no matter the material or like how fitted something is. There is such beautiful folds, and there's such movement to it, like especially with the characters posing. It's so because like the posing this man does is just insane, and I am in love with it. And while I know that that's the case for all of his stuff, there's something about this era in fashion and the way he shows us fabric that it just, it tickles my pickle. I love it very much. I'll get to talking about the ways the era plays into his visuals a little later on, not specifically talking about the era, but you'll see the way it comes up when I'm talking about the action shots with the horses and stuff, because it's like, with it being horse and carriage, there's a bit of like the way the action works with that is really beautiful. But I want to talk about the story a little more before I'm talking about the actual action in it. And it's in those like action shots where a lot of things really come together. So instead, let's talk story and character, especially character. I'm talking in broad terms here because I am, of course, covering 3 books at once. Some specifics will be brought up, obviously, like I said, but this isn't Cirque du Freak Part 2. Not yet, but eventually I will get on that. Well, given this is, after all, called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, let's start with the literal big man himself, Mr. Jonathan Joestar. We see him, and someone we'll be getting to soon, grow from young teens into young adults over the course of the first book, with the second and third volume taking place over quite a short space of time, all things considered. If I'm totally honest, despite being the main character of the book, he's rarely who I was personally focused on. I found the story itself more interesting than his character, but that isn't to say I didn't enjoy seeing the ways he grows as the story goes through. It's a story about finding strength and standing up for himself and standing up for loved ones as well in the face of one of the most wretched and evil villains I've seen in a long time. And I think that's the thing with JoJo, though, is like his foil is so evil. Dio is one of those antagonist of all time type guys, so it takes a lot. So it takes a lot to make him, for me at least, as enticing to read about as Dio. But it is seeing him overcome everything to be able to not only match Dio's power in a fight, but to be able to actually beat him in that. To beat him that makes you go, oh, yeah, no, he is just fantastic. Like, it makes you back him, especially given who he's being backed by. More on those two after we get to Dio, who, like I say, villain of all time. Pure evil motherfucker. One singular goal, be in control and take power wherever and however he can. Even as a child, he is despicable. Before he even has any, mythical type powers, he uses the natural human powers he has to commit atrocities, including killing a dog, kissing a girl without her consent just so she can think of her first kiss without so she can't think of her first kiss without thinking of how he disgraced her. Oh, and he killed both his actual father and the man who became his father figure, taking him on after thinking that Dio's father had died in natural circumstances. Like, Dio killed his own father by making him sick, but it seemed like natural causes. Now, because Dio and JoJo are about the same age, when they would have been infants, but they would have been babies, as far as, why can't I remember his father's name? JoJo's father believes that Dio's father saved his life. He wasn't, he was robbing him, but that's why Mr. Joestar takes Dio on when his father passes, and then he attempts to kill this JoJo's father in the same way. And I'm not reading this off the script, which is why I should have scripted this bit, but I realised that, I probably should have put it in. He tries to kill him in the same way that he killed his own father. It doesn't work. His plan gets foiled. And then he ends up killing him anyway. And I think that's around the time that he actually starts getting his powers. Because his father puts his own life on the line for JoJo. And it's a brilliant scene. But there is nothing redeemable about Dio. And actually, I love that. I think it is pretty common with villains to give them that backstory that makes you feel for them or humanize them. It makes you understand why they are the villain that they are. The term villain origin story is a bit of a meme for a reason, but Dio, he's just like that. We are inundated with villains that people can find ways to redeem, and I'm sure people do try to find ways to redeem Dio. But this man is just a bellend, and God bless that. Our two other notable characters are Speedwagon. He's, our lovable sidekick type. I think he's utterly charming, and I love him dearly. He went from trying to beat down and mug JoJo to being his bestie and willing to die for him in the space of, at best, 24 hours. We all need a Speedwagon in our lives. Ultimate ride or die. Also, yes, like REO Speedwagon. There's a lot of music references in the naming convention this series. I did know that going in, and I kind of love it. In fact, I really love it. And speaking of which, we have Will Antonio Zeppeli. Obviously, as in Zeppelin, Led Zeppelin, all that. He's our knowledge figure, our sensei. He teaches JoJo his way so that Dio can be defeated. He's the Yoda figure, or, whichever other sensei type fits your nerd brain. He's low-key a bit nutso when you first meet him, but I grew very fond of him very quickly. And he really went out a hero's death. It is fantastically played out, and I love the way things are tied together with him. He taught JoJo all he could, and in that last act he gives his life force so JoJo can reach his full power. It's brilliant the way they fit together. I love the way that Araki balances a heavy story that has a good amount of serious moments and top tier violence with funny little moments. They never cut into the story and ruin a moment, but their presence is still felt. Though, I will say, when I was reading Volume 1, once JoJo and Dio become adults, one of the funny parts was their proportions. These men are shaped, for sure, just muscles on muscles on muscles. I got used to it pretty quickly, but early on it did tickle me. I know it's pretty standard for the era these books first came out, and I know the proportions change as the series progresses, but giant body, little head is very funny to me. I'm sorry. But as much as my notes were, about the character and the plot and the actual storytelling and the writing, do you know what 99% of my notes were? Some variation of me going, let's go! When there's a cool fucking action shot, a gorgeous spread, insane pose, weird ass bit of violence, all that. It's so cool. There is a lot of pure ridiculous nonsense, and when I say that, I say it with every ounce of affection in my body. Here are just a few of the many shots that got me as I was going through, and I could be here all day if I just showed you a slideshow of them. Araki is an insanely talented artist to the point where it does motivate me so hard to want to get better, and I do not expect skills like this to come with any sort of speed, but I do need to study his stuff even more now that I've read something of his. A man pulls off a Trojan horse move with an actual fucking horse, for God's sake. I love it so much. And there's such a good balance in the way he does violence. It's a great mix of utterly gratuitous and unbelievable, because you have these men with mythical powers and strength like gods. They can do things that are just insane. Like, there's this point where a guy gets his hand cut in half. Not like the fingertips are cut off. I mean literally, like, there is a top half and a bottom half of his hand. It's mad. Like, they can just do this insane shit. It's all cool as hell, but sometimes there are these moments where it made my skin crawl because I could feel it. It just, There are two moments in particular. One's in volume 3, and I don't think I snapped a picture of it, where somebody throws a rose to Dio and the stalk wedges in his eye. And there's another one where it's in volume 2, where you can see Dio grabs the skin of, I want to say it's JoJo's hand, and he just tears it away, and it's visceral in exactly the right way to make me want to chuck. It's so damn good. And while all of the action sequences are absolutely incredible, nothing makes me happier than this one. I made the joke seeing this initial panel going like, oh, I've seen something like this in old 90s Japanese wrestling clips, and then almost immediately went, Wait, no, I was joking. No, this is literally just a dog collar match, but with actual life or death consequences. Which, by the way, nobody tell Mox about this shit. Like, the way he's acting at the minute, he'd absolutely pull out a match like this. Why not? Now, as I was reading, there were a couple of people I was keeping updated with my less put together thoughts than you're seeing here, and as I got to the end I was giving some final thoughts, and one of the people was my brother, and he rightly pointed out that it's a bit of a shame that I know about future JoJo's. Like, I sort of know how it works, not just knowing that there are later volumes of this series, but knowing the naming convention thing, because Araki kills off JoJo at the end of this book, which is an absolute fucking power move. Like, killing off your main character at the end of your book is insane. I cannot imagine having read this when it first came out and reading that ending. It's an incredibly effective ending anyway, but I know it would have hit so much harder had I not known the future of this series. And it has really hooked me in, if that isn't clear by now. The only thing that I found that I was like, with, was that the term stand or stands never came up, but I assume that's just something that isn't present in this first part and becomes more of a thing later on. Like the Hamon thing, I assume that power is what sort of becomes stands later down the line. That ability to take on life force, which happens twice. JoJo takes on his father's life force and Zeppeli's life force, so I assume that's sort of how the stands work beyond them being powers. But like I said, if it isn't clear by now, I am so hooked in. This is ridiculously fun, pure nonsense in the best way possible, and I'm sure I will only find more to love as time goes on. I plan on watching the anime eventually, but I want to wait till I've read whichever part is being adapted. I'm also unlikely to keep reviewing future volumes unless somehow it ends up being completely awful and I hate it or whatever. Like, something has to happen, and I don't mean plot wise, I mean writing wise, for me to come back to reviews. I think, like, this is for the sake of going, I am bought in and I want to continue, and you should also read the series. And the first part is only 3 volumes, so it's not too much to like get yourself bought in with. I read these over a couple of days, and I do know that it'll be a fair bit longer in the future because I know they're more than 3 parts, but buying into the series with just 3 parts is like it's like a pilot. It's great. I'm genuinely really excited for it, though I will be finishing Chainsaw Man before I get onto that, because they are all lined up in my library reservations. I have volume 6 through 11 lined up in my library reservations. I'm very excited. There will only be 1, maybe 2 reviews left this year before like my final wrap-ups, that sort of thing. Partly because of time, partly because I'm running out of space on my external hard drive. I need to replace that. But let me know what you're reading to round out your year, or if there are any books you're hoping to come your way this Christmas if you do celebrate. Also, feel free to like, feel free to subscribe, feel free to put your notifications on, and all the other cringe shit I'm supposed to ask you to do. But, most importantly, I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, a wonderful whenever you are watching this. Take good care of yourself. Right.